Well, we've had a number of recent cases of sexual harassment and bullying which really have highlighted the dangers for employers in getting investigations wrong, highlighting in particular the need for business to be able to conduct thorough workplace investigations. Joydeep Kaur is Managing Principal of workplace law firm People and Culture Strategies. Last week he addressed a group of senior business leaders on getting workplace investigations right, and he's here with us to join us and talk about some of those key messages. Joydeep, good to have you on Business Agenda again. Thank you. Give us the context here though, and why you're kind of pitching this as something so important for employers.
This has become an increasingly critical and challenging area for employers over the last few years. What we've found is, as most of the viewers would be aware, is that there's been a proliferation of cases of sexual harassment and bullying and general challenges arising from workplace behaviour. Now, that starts with allegations that are typically raised internally within the organisation, and so before it will see the light of day from an external court point of view, the employer will have some opportunities available to it to look into the matter and, if necessary, take appropriate remedial action or disciplinary action, or at the very least form a view as to whether or not the allegations were true or not. The watch out for employers is if they don't take those steps with the appropriate level of seriousness, then they could actually really compromise their ability to defend the litigation that might ensue, depending on what the outcome is that they take.
Businesses talk in terms of time and money, I imagine, with you.
Correct.
So when you're talking about the appropriate level of seriousness, you know, what are you saying in terms of resources? Time and money. What do they put into it?
What I shared with the audience that I was before last week was that there are really three critical phases in conducting workplace investigations. The first is the need for the employer or whoever's doing the investigation to appropriately frame the investigation. What is it that we are looking into? Why are we looking into it? Where are we going to do it? When? So that the what, where, when, how, why questions are all part of that critical framing stage. Some of the important decisions that an employer needs to make are, well, is this something that we're going to handle internally, or is this something that we're going to outsource because we might not have the capability to do it internally? What are the ramifications? There's a whole heap of consequences that flow from that. The next phase is very much around the process. Things like making sure that you don't prejudge the outcome, making sure that everyone is given an opportunity to be heard, making sure that you're speaking to all the relevant people, but all the time being mindful of the fact that there's probably a lot of people watching what's going on with this internal investigation, and all of a sudden, if you start drawing too much attention to it, you run the risk of damaging people's reputations, even though you might have the best of intentions in the way you're conducting that investigation. And the final step is really the outcome. So we talk about framing, we talk about process, and then we talk about outcomes. And that outcomes piece is so important. I see a lot of employers who leave a lot of things hanging. They don't appropriately communicate with the key stakeholders when it comes to these investigations, and so it actually fuels, in many instances, a lot of gossip, a lot of speculation, and they feel that for legal reasons or otherwise they just can't talk about anything. And what does that really do for the employer in terms of the future management of its business? So they're really the three critical phases in terms of employers trying to get this right.
And what were you trying to get across as, I guess, the key messages for businesses then in looking at those three phases and how to deal with them?
Yeah, I think that one of the real watch-outs for employers at the moment is, particularly in this uncertain era where there's a lot of salaciousness around claims of bullying and harassment and other things that happen in workplaces, is they are overreacting. And I think the important lesson for employers is, by all means react, but don't overreact. Bear in mind that allegations are only allegations until such time as you have formed a view to the contrary. And make sure, the final message, make sure that you're dealing with these things as quickly as possible, because the last thing you want is for these things to be dragging on.
Yeah, well, or what? I mean, what's the consequences? What do you see?
Well, the consequences from potentially an employee relations point of view is adverse perceptions of people's reputation. Investigations often, disturbingly, can last months, and that's really not helping the employer and certainly not helping any of the individuals involved. So some level of expeditiousness around trying to get these things conducted quickly is important, and they've got to get closure on it. They don't want to leave these things hanging. The worst case scenario is your investigation process is externally scrutinised in an unfair dismissal claim or another form of litigation, and then all of a sudden you have to account for and justify every single step that you've taken.
Joydeep, great to have you on the show again. Thank you very much. On workplace investigations, Joydeep, one of our regular commentators on all workplace issues here on Business Agenda on Sky.